Most English learners can debate grammar rules for hours, but freeze the second someone says, "Nice weather today."
Here's why small talk is the hardest part of English fluency and the simple trick that fixes it in one conversation.
Okay, so I want to start with something that happened to me last week. I was in line at the coffee shop and the barista said, "Crazy weather we're having, huh?" And I just froze.
Wait, you froze. You're a native English speaker.
I know, but it wasn't about the words. It was about not knowing what she actually wanted from me. Was she asking a real question? Did she want a real answer about barometric pressure? Or was this just noise, like a social handshake?
That's actually the exact thing my Spanish tutor told me about small talk in Spanish. She said, "Emma, nobody actually cares about the weather. The weather's just the excuse."
Right. It's the excuse to open a channel. That's such a good way to put it.
And this is exactly why small talk trips up English learners more than almost anything else. Because with grammar, there are rules. With small talk, the rules are invisible. Nobody writes them down.
It's the unwritten curriculum of English.
Exactly. You can score a 95 on a grammar test and still stand there like a deer in headlights when a coworker asks, "How was your weekend?"
Because that question isn't really a question. It's an invitation to play a very specific, very short game with very specific rules.
And that's what we're breaking down today. Not just what to say, but the actual architecture behind small talk, why it exists, how native speakers structure it without thinking, and a method you can use starting today to stop freezing and start flowing.
So let's talk about a real case, because I think this makes it click. There's a well-known account from a Polish engineer named Chris, who moved to Dublin for a tech job. His English was incredible on paper. He'd studied it for over a decade, passed advanced certification exams, and could read technical documentation faster than most native speakers.
But
He described his first 3 months at the office as isolating, not because his colleagues were unfriendly, because every single morning someone would pass him in the kitchen and say something like, "Rough one today, yeah?" Or "Ready for the weekend?" And he genuinely didn't know how to respond. He'd either over-explain, going into real detail about his actual weekend plans, or he'd freeze and just nod.
And the over-explaining is such a common trap. Learners think, they asked me a question, so I need to give a full and accurate answer.
Right, but that's not what's happening at all. When someone asks, "How's it going?" in a hallway, they're not requesting a status report. They're performing a tiny ritual that says, "I see you, we're on friendly terms, carry on."
Chris eventually figured this out, but here's the interesting part. He didn't figure it out by studying more grammar or vocabulary. He figured it out by watching the rhythm. He started noticing that these exchanges had a predictable shape. Short question, short answer, short return question, done. Like a tennis ball going back and forth exactly twice before someone walks away.
That rhythm is the whole secret. And once he saw the pattern, he told people later, it was like a switch flipped. He wasn't translating anymore. He was just playing the game.
And that's really the goal of everything we do on this podcast. It's not just knowing English, it's recognizing the social patterns underneath it.
So let's get into why this actually works from a learning science perspective, because I don't want this to just be a story. There's real research behind why pattern recognition beats memorization here.
Right. So first there's Stephen Krashen's input hypothesis, which a lot of our listeners have probably heard us mention before. Krashen's core idea is that we acquire language most effectively through comprehensible input, meaning language that's just slightly above our current level in context we can actually understand.
And small talk is basically the perfect comprehensible input because it's short, it's repetitive, and it's predictable. You hear "how's it going" 1,000 times before you ever produce it yourself.
Exactly, and that repetition matters because of what Richard Schmidt called the noticing hypothesis. Schmidt argued that you can be exposed to a language pattern endlessly, but if you never consciously notice it as a pattern, it won't become part of your usable knowledge. It just passes through you.
So Chris, hearing "rough one today, yeah?" for weeks, didn't help him until the moment he actually noticed the shape of it. Question, response, return question, exit.
That noticing moment is the whole unlock. And then there's Merrill Swain's output hypothesis, which says that comprehension alone isn't enough. You actually have to try producing the language yourself, even imperfectly, because that act of production forces you to test your internal grammar against reality.
Which is why we always tell listeners, don't just listen to this podcast passively. Pause it. Say the responses out loud, even if you're alone in your car or on a walk.
There's also Alan Baddeley's work on working memory that's relevant here. Baddeley's research shows that our working memory, the part of our brain juggling information in real-time conversation, has very limited capacity. If you're mentally translating word by word and also trying to conjugate verbs and also trying to think of a clever response, you overload that limited space and you freeze, exactly like Alex did at the coffee shop.
Which is exactly what happened to me.
Right, but when a pattern becomes automatic, like a small talk script you've practiced, it stops taking up working memory space. It becomes what Baddeley would call a chunk, a single unit instead of 5 separate decisions.
And there's one more piece I want to bring in, which is Robert Bjork's concept of desirable difficulty. Bjork's research suggests that learning sticks better when it involves a little bit of productive struggle, not passive comfort.
So, randomly practicing small talk scenarios out of order, mixing up weather talk, weekend talk, and compliment talk, actually builds stronger memory than drilling one type over and over.
Which is why today, we're not just giving you one scripted exchange. We're giving you a flexible framework you can apply to any small talk situation.
And speaking of frameworks, this is where we introduce today's method. We call this the Ping-Pong Method.
I love this name.
Because small talk really is like a short round of ping pong. Nobody expects a 50-hit rally. They expect 2 or 3 quick exchanges, and then the game naturally ends and everyone moves on with their day.
So let's break down the 3 hits of the ping-pong method. Hit 1 is the opener. This is almost always a low-stakes observation or question. Weather, weekend, a shared situation like waiting in line or being stuck in traffic.
Hit 2 is your return, and this is the part learners get wrong most often. Your return should be short, slightly positive or neutral, and then, this is key, it should bounce the ball back with a question of your own.
So if someone says, "Crazy weather, huh?" You don't need a weather report. You just say something like, "I know, right? Did you get caught in it earlier?"
And hit 3 is the close. This is where one person adds a tiny detail or reaction, and then the conversation naturally winds down, usually with something like, "Anyway, have a good one," or, "Well, better get back to it."
3 hits. Open, return, and bounce. Close. That's it. That's the whole game.
And once you internalize that shape, you stop worrying about saying something brilliant, because small talk was never about being brilliant. It was about completing the pattern smoothly.
Let's actually demonstrate this live using some real scenarios.
Okay, scenario 1, the weather opener.
Can you believe this rain? It hasn't stopped all week.
I know, my shoes are basically ruined at this point. Are you walking to the station later?
Perfect ping pong. Hit 1, weather observation. Hit 2, short reaction plus a bounce back question.
And that's honestly something I stole directly from Spanish, actually. My tutor pointed out that in Spanish, small talk often uses the same structure, a comment plus a quick question back. It's called something similar to a gancho, which basically means a hook that keeps the exchange going.
That's such a nice connection. In French, it's a little different, actually. I've been learning French for the podcast prep, and my tutor mentioned that French small talk can be a bit more understated, sometimes just a nod and a short phrase, and it's considered polite not to over-elaborate with strangers.
Which is a great reminder that these patterns aren't universal. English small talk tends to reward a slightly upbeat, bouncy tone, even if the topic itself is mundane.
Let's do scenario 2, the weekend opener.
So, any big plans this weekend?
Nothing too exciting, probably just catching up on sleep. What about you? Anything fun on your end?
See how that response does 2 jobs at once? It gives a tiny, honest detail, and it immediately bounces the question back. That second part is what keeps you from sounding like you're closing the conversation.
Scenario 3, and this one trips people up a lot. The compliment opener.
I really like your jacket. Where'd you get it?
Oh, thank you. I actually found it at a little shop downtown. I love your bag, too. Is that new?
This is such a good example because a lot of learners either underreact, just saying thanks and letting the conversation die, or overreact, going into a long story about the jacket's entire history.
Short thanks, one small detail, bounce back. That's the whole formula.
Let's do one more. Scenario 4, the small complaint opener, which is very common in English-speaking workplaces.
Mondays, am I right?
Tell me about it. At least the coffee's fresh today. That's helping.
And notice, Emma didn't actually complain back or agree in a heavy way. She kept it light and added a small positive turn, which is very typical in American small talk specifically. It's a bit different from some other English-speaking cultures where a bit more genuine commiseration is expected.
That's a great point, actually, and it connects to something worth mentioning. Small talk tone can shift depending on which English-speaking country you're in, but for general American workplace and social small talk, staying light and slightly upbeat is almost always the safest choice.
Let's talk about the most common mistakes we hear from learners, because avoiding these is honestly half the battle.
Mistake 1, treating every question as literal. When someone says, "How are you?" in passing, in the hallway, walking past you, the expected response is almost always just, "Good, you?" Not a detailed update on your actual emotional state.
Save the real answer for when someone stops, makes eye contact, and clearly has time to actually listen.
Mistake 2, forgetting to bounce the question back. This is the single biggest thing that makes a conversation feel one-sided or awkward. If someone asks about your weekend and you don't ask about theirs, the exchange feels unfinished, like a game where only one person hit the ball.
Mistake 3, and this one is close to my heart because I do this in French constantly. Over-preparing a script and then panicking when the conversation doesn't go exactly as rehearsed.
Right, because real small talk is never word-for-word predictable. That's why the ping-pong method focuses on the shape of the exchange rather than exact scripted lines. You're not memorizing sentences, you're memorizing a rhythm.
Mistake 4, avoiding small talk altogether because it feels pointless or fake. A lot of learners come from cultures where small talk with strangers is much less common, so it can feel almost dishonest.
But once you reframe it, not as fake friendliness, but as a small social ritual that opens the door to real connection later, it gets a lot easier to participate in genuinely.
That reframe changed everything for me with French, honestly. Once I stopped seeing small talk as pointless chatter and started seeing it as a warm-up lap before the real conversation, I relaxed a lot more.
Let's do an extended, more natural conversation now, so listeners can hear the ping-pong method happening in a longer, more realistic exchange, the way it might actually happen at an office or a social event.
Perfect. Let's set the scene. We're at a work event and we've just met.
Hey, I don't think we've met. I'm Emma.
Hi, Emma. I'm Alex. Nice to meet you. Have you been with the company long?
About 2 years now. Time really flies. What about you? Are you new here?
Just started last month, actually. Still learning where everything is.
Oh, that first month is always a bit of a maze. What team are you on?
I'm on the design side. What about you?
Marketing. So we probably cross paths more than you'd think.
That would be great, actually. I've been looking for a friendly face around here.
Well, consider this a friendly face acquired. Anyway, I should grab some food before it's all gone, but it was really nice meeting you.
You too. I'm sure I'll see you around.
See how that whole exchange, which covered names, jobs, and a light joke, stayed pretty short? Under a minute of actual talking, and it ended naturally, without any awkward silence.
That's the real skill, honestly. Not filling time, but reading when the natural stopping point has arrived and exiting smoothly.
And that closing line, something like, "It was nice meeting you," or "I should let you get back to it," is basically the universal signal in American English that a small talk exchange is wrapping up.
Good to know. Both for ending your own conversations gracefully and for recognizing when someone else is signaling that to you.
So let's recap the ping-pong method one more time, because I think repetition here really helps it stick, especially with what we talked about earlier from Bjork's research on desirable difficulty.
Hit 1, the opener. Usually a low-stakes comment or question about something shared in the moment, weather, day of the week, a situation you're both in.
Hit 2, your return. Keep it short, keep it slightly positive, and always, always bounce a question back.
Hit 3, the close. A small final detail or reaction followed by a graceful exit line.
And remember Chris from our case study earlier? He didn't master this by memorizing more vocabulary. He mastered it by noticing the pattern and then practicing producing it himself, which lines up perfectly with what Schmidt and Swain's research tells us about how real acquisition happens.
So this week, here's a simple challenge for our listeners. Try starting or responding to one small talk exchange a day using the 3-hit structure. It doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is noticing the pattern in the wild and then testing your own version of it.
And honestly, give yourself permission to feel a little clumsy at first. I still fumble sometimes in Spanish, and Alex still fumbles in French. That clumsiness is part of the process, not a sign you're doing it wrong.
Exactly. Fluency isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the ability to keep the rally going even after a slightly awkward hit.
Let's close today's episode with a quick vocabulary review. 5 words and phrases from today's conversation.
First, small talk, meaning light, casual conversation about unimportant topics, often used to be polite or to start a longer conversation.
Second, bounce back, as in bouncing a question back to someone. It means returning something, in this case, a question, right after receiving it.
Third, commiserate, meaning to express sympathy or share in someone's complaint or frustration.
Fourth, graceful exit, a smooth, polite way of ending a conversation or leaving a situation without awkwardness.
And fifth, read the room, meaning to correctly sense the mood or atmosphere of a social situation, which is exactly what you're doing when you notice a small talk exchange winding down.
Great episode today. Practice those 3 hits this week, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you next time.